Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and this is a letter from Lindsey Graham dated March 15th, and I was just going through some of the letters that he's put out, and this was one of them. So it is to Attorney General Barr, and what he's asking for here is let me just read this part. As you are undoubtedly aware, during a recent interview on 60 Minutes, former acting director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Andrew McCabe, explained how Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein discussed with him and others within the Department of Justice the possibility of removing the President of the United States by invoking the 25th Amendment. In addition, Mr. McCabe described how the Deputy Attorney General, in a manner that was absolutely serious, offered to wear a wire into the White House to record the president and gather evidence against him. The committee is deeply concerned with these discussions and whether they essentially indicate that two of the highest-ranking law enforcement officials in the United States were discussing what amounts to a coup against the president. Accordingly, the committee plans to conduct oversight into these discussions and related matters. To that end, the committee requests that the DOJ provide the following documents by no later than March 29th, 2019. Now, these are the things that he's asking for, and it's the things that actually were declassified by Trump back in September 17th. And so I don't know what the status of them is right now. I've been trying to find out if Barr responded to this because obviously now it is April 6th and that is long past March 29th. So I don't know what he did. I don't know if he responded, but this kind of request actually has been going on for a while because guess what? Goodlatte in the House, when he was head of the House Judiciary, was asking for the same thing, the McCabe memos. That's what he was asking for, and this is back September 25th. So this is another article that has to do with that, and they've been asking for them for a long time. They're not out yet. Why not? I don't know, because they have been declassified. But what I kind of think is that we need to see some other things first. I mean, not only do we need to see these, but we also need to see what the Inspector General Horowitz has come up with, because he has been investigating the FBI and the DOJ, and I know for sure that he put out an IG report on McCabe and recommended criminal charges. That was back, I think it was about a year ago, maybe in February of last year. And so when that came out, it was very clear. It was not a very long report, but in it, he specifically said he recommended charges for McCabe and a few other people. And so I don't know what the status of that is. Once he makes the recommendations for the charges, then it has to go to prosecutors. And so this is why Jeff Sessions hooked up Horowitz, who could only recommend criminal charges be brought, and he paired him up with Huber, who is a U.S. attorney. Now, Huber can impanel grand juries and can do the prosecutorial things that need to be done for a grand jury to get an indictment. But this is the big subject that's going on right now, having to do with, can grand jury testimony be released? Well, I think maybe this is kind of tied in together. It's very possible that this cannot be released. Maybe that's part of what Mueller was doing. I don't know. If Mueller was really genuinely doing what his first task was, and that was looking for any Russian interference in the election. Honestly, that's what he was really supposed to look at. And then the Trump thing was like secondary. And of course, because if there was Russian interference, then he would want to know with whom. And if Trump was involved in that, it would be there. But if he was really doing his job, it's very possible that he looked into Russian interference in a serious way. And if he did so, he's going to have the dirt on these people. The FBI people who stood in the way, and the DOJ, everybody that stood in the way of Donald Trump being elected and also tried to get him out once he was in office, because they were colluding with foreign officials to interfere in our election and to take down a duly elected president once he was in. So this was something that came out just on the 5th, and you can see the court ruling implies that Barr must redact grand jury info from Mueller report. Can't put it out there. That's what this article is saying. He was right. He cannot put it out there, and I know the Democrats are not going to like it, but that is what happens, and he cannot do it. That's what the court said, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. And you have to understand that the D.C. Circuit is pretty left-leaning. Okay, most of them are Democrats. So it's very interesting that that's what they came up with. And it's because of this Rule 6E is the whole thing of it, because it does not allow for the grand jury secrecy to be put out. You know, that it's just the grand jury information cannot be done. Now, here's one key to why the Democrats are so focused on wanting this grand jury evidence. It's because grand jury evidence is not held to the same standard as regular evidence, okay? Things can be introduced in front of a grand jury that could not be introduced legally into a court of law. So it's very possible there are things in there that the Democrats could seize on and leak out to their media buddies and make a big stink over, but it's not something that would necessarily be allowed in a court of law. And I don't know what kinds of things those would be, but, you know, they have very strong standards as to how they can gather evidence and they can present evidence. So it's very possible that maybe the NSA has introduced some evidence there, or whatever the case is. First of all, I think it's very telling that the Mueller group, because they were almost all like these big Democrat supporters, and yet this was the conclusion of the report. And although there are some, yes, there's the unnamed sources, if they really are unnamed sources, are coming out and saying, oh, but, you know, it didn't really reflect what we said. You know, Mueller evidently doesn't feel that way, because if Mueller really believed that Barr had misrepresented his conclusion, then he would have said something. Plus, Barr quoted his very words from the report. I mean, that was a direct quote. He put it in quotation marks. That's what quotation marks are for. So, you know, it's one of those things that, like, if Mueller really thought that he was being misrepresented, he would say something. He did with the BuzzFeed, remember? He came right out pretty fast on that one, too. And he corrected the BuzzFeed story about Cohen. So I think that they really cannot claim that Mueller is standing in contrary to what Barr's saying, but that's what they're claiming. Okay, but this was a great victory here, really, because this is upholding the rule of law. That is what the law says. So they cannot force him to turn over all of the report. He has to redact things. It's required by law, and now this court has upheld that. So if it goes to the Supreme Court, they will do the same thing, but hopefully that's not going to happen. Anyway, I did want to point this out. He also had an article, and I apologize for this great big ad up the top. I can't get it off there, okay? Because if I turn on my ad block, it will block the whole page. So I hate things like that. Anyway, Attorney General defends handling of Mueller's Russian report. So there you go. He was defending it, and he had every right to, because it came out in the court that, yeah, he's right. He is absolutely right. So I'll put these articles down below. You can read them at your leisure. And I just wanted to let you know what was going on at this point. And, you know, things are happening. They're just not always happening as fast as we want them to. But I hope everybody's starting to see how pieces are falling into place. I mean, you know, when we start out, we have this great big puzzle sitting there in front of us, all these little bitty pieces, and we need to figure out how they start fitting together. And by now, I'm starting to see some big sections be put together and how it's leading up to where we're going to see some people indicted for real. They will be in court. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.